I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the complete, perfected, fully awakened being, everything knowledge and equal conduct. Siddhartha, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shackling land. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Siddhartha, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shackling land. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When O supreme amongst you, you fall on despair. You paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to none that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 every devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms' atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank as foreseen, subdue the 12 faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15, to the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on Masavulcha's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination,
no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well, said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadaviputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25 for the short mandala. Sashi Chuchi Metotran Rira Lenji Nindi Gempadi Sange Shindu Mite Uwagi Drokun Nanda Shenla Jabasho Jetsa Lama Dampe Kenamki Choku Kila Kinsi
Dundin Jeda Zambe Duje Mala Saje Chuji Chava Abdu So Yeda Guru Rana Mandela Kamni Yatayami Sanje Chedan Saji Chanala Chanjo Bada Dani Jasan She Dagi Chujin Jive Sanam Dola Benje Sanje Ruhra Sho Sanje Chedan Saji Chanala Chanjo Bada Dani Jasan She Dagi Chujin Jive Sanam Je Dola Benje Sanje Sanje Chedan Saji Chanala Chanjo Bada Dani Jasan She Dagi Chujin Jive Sanam Dola Benje Sanje Ruhra Sho 한가도 되니서 다와든지 뭐니 대비신의 된제에 고담들라 찾아라 은연연제서는 주변은 지지선세 관계된 데가 전화배모 된제저라 소와도 신들은 도시 반대자가라 말은 보지 다기 쪽으로 벤데디션에 거리 침배 권해져서 고선도 제공을 되어서 다 굴론 검대스죠라 아굴론 전주 검잡 싱그러하다 잘라 먹어시라.
So once more, assuming they're correct, motivation, intention, we know how to do that by now.
다 가오곰 드링 제로무칭 제외 람림 거 털래. 저삼 지중화디네. 배 교상부 인 잠시 가오곰로.
Now rejoicing, thinking how fortunate one is to be able to hear and contemplate the essential stages of the path to enlightenment composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. How wonderful. Rejoice.
추 람림 자첨부르데 양저 추님배 칸라 수수 셈나라 주미지 남도 삼다 마다 코링지. 아니 야구님마도 당 셈바군로야 도자한테 레용 그러시다. 저것이 파주시야가 치료다 매우서야 치료 우 비딩 exercise 롱종 데스 체니로 주미지 남도 바 매우서 다 대화당 대외 아니 내주주 마템바체 내외 내주도나 틸라셈마도체 마옹베 자신도 좀 단다들 마고시로 다 단다 네 가리 람림 가리 저런무신 송바 대수수 셈주당 대화치 감도지도 치긴 선바 디용야치 당고 디 주미지 남도지 봐 대스 명단야치 비딩 exercise 대신에 오도스라
Buddha Dharma is very vast, very profound, very special to listen to in terms of the Lam Rim, these graduated stages we're going to. But what can stop us from receiving that correctly are these thoughts of inappropriate attention we have, these mental constructs, these discursive thoughts. So in order to pacify those, we're going to do some breathing exercise to pacify those, and so that we can remain in the present moment and very much mix the mind as best we can with the teaching. So in that sense, we're not going to worry about the past. The past is gone. Try not to fixate on that. Don't think about future plans. That's yet to come. Just keep the mind in the present moment. So in order to reduce that discursive thought, breathing exercise.
dungi nanga lama tsonga wa zor ju choju jiwa seda jiwa yu ten ante da gusung tu ki chin lab susu na uni ne uk tu tende na gusung tu ki chin lab yung te to kuya na susu sim nangi chimi ji namdo sim ma jiwa tang tu sama pa ten so tenje te se ji kum des kya.
The way to visualize is that in the space in front one visualizes the protector Lama Tsongkhapa and heart sons, the enlightened beings, and from the blessings of the light rays coming from the enlightened beings in the space in front of you, those light rays enter into your nostrils and bless your body, speech, and mind. So that means that your body, speech, and mind become blessed, and any discursive thoughts you have, any mental constructs or mental unease, is dispelled by that blessing.
Oya, ta zo di lamrim chanjuk lamji rimba wa ta chanjuk lam anda di lamrim yonguis na lamrim dudens na di dezen shi na la dama shegi yoresta kizungwa ma chik labje lapsar di yongjange dezen shi khare lamna ni chö khung zumba zawab chewa tenpa shirwa adi kizing dosa warada chö khung zumba zawab chewa tenpa sa dila chidang ta chik tomba chomdien de toba tang kumbolo dune toba che ta mikse kizing chiranzo choj pande adasha lo gyuloya tang lama zonga ba lo gyuloya dezo chö khung zumba zawab chewa tenpa sa de tusimba che ta de dangal kuwa jiwe chö ji chewa tenpa sa de zenyu che chewa nida de me chö la ni she shida chawa damangwa ji loma shida de rimba se de zen shidi da lamrim gi joja yus zo wa da de zen shidi na la chu du ro yo resra
So, looking at the Lamrim, the stages of the path, particularly what we're studying, this hymn of experience or lines of experience composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. First, we looked at the validity of the text in terms of its source by looking at the greatness of the author. So, tracing it back to the source being that of Shakyamuni Buddha, and then latterly Nagarjuna, and then some of us would have read the life stories of Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa. So that's the greatness of the composers of the text. So the validity of the source by seeing the greatness of the author. Secondly, understanding the greatness of the text by what it expresses, the instruction.
chewa ni dan de me chö la ni she shida chawa
Sorry. And so that second one, once again, understanding the greatness of the teaching by seeing what it expresses. So what the Dharma is expressing is great. Thirdly, how to teach and listen to that great Dharma. And finally, how the students are actually led sequentially on the stages to enlightenment. So these four essentially, these four main headings is how you would approach any of the Lamrim texts.
다 당하라 구하기 위치 채워된 봤어야 돼. 당하셔야 돼. 다 단다 강조디 담아 심 강조 심 여러.
Yeah.
안한조 심디 다 심기 균就是파 시제 아니 연된 달람 그림보다 tumba 아니 지고 신예된 주네 채워지게 아니 산제 공방 파도 도당 그림보디게
Lasso.
아니 시규 텔라 당아서 여러
Lasso.
텔라 당아서 텔라 네 구바지 외치디 되게 체주 되게 채워된 바스 되게 체주 시기 여레스 저기 채워된 바스.
Right, so now this second subheading or topic outlined, the greatness of the Dharma. Here we're looking at the greatness of the Dharma by what it expresses, what it instructs. So what is this instruction that is imparted, the Dharma? It is for our mind, so that we can remove the invalid states of mind, the faults, and actualize the good qualities or knowledge. And that is done step by step, right from the first reliance, how to rely correctly on the spiritual friend, right up to the fruit or goal of perfect Buddhahood. So for the purpose of respecting that instruction, for the purpose of seeing how great the Dharma is, we respect the instruction.
다 딜라야 되는 시도와 템바 탐지 개매도 또 소라말로 당하도 쳐 계획 공부 딜라드니요 니제 전부 양산 내장 송 식제티 지난 배제디 여러 알람을 연구 배제디마 다게 되게 전에 아니 이제 잡연도 야야고 요르스
Ladilla. So now this second subheading of the Lamrim, seeing that the Dharma is great by what it teaches, by what is being instructed in terms of this reliance, has again 4 subheadings within it. And if you look on page 4 of your English text, the 4th verse down covers these 4 subheadings of instruction. So through it you can realize that all of the conqueror's teachings, all Buddha's teachings are without contradiction. Secondly, understand the scriptures as instruction, easily find the intention of the conqueror, and finally be protected from the abyss of wrong conduct, very faulty conduct. These are the 4.
세상다 템바스도 템바 탐지 개매도 또 템바스는 산지이 템바스 산지이 템바스야 돼 먼저 공려야 돼 디나라 면람 시도에서 돼 디과지야미지 교 무슨 소 랑 심리요 되는 산지 템바 인스는 되라 도와지데 동성아
유디
오 디르디다디 디도야
하여서
야다 타마타마든 어디에도 디과지야미 자식 교 무슨 소와지 랑 심리요 6, 7 page 되도
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Krishna.
7, page 7.
Page 7, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So everyone looking on page 7 for what's coming?
타마데도 하면
Yes, do. At the bottom of page 7.
어디 디과지야미 자식 교 무슨 소와지 랑 심리요 되는 산지 템바 산지에게 템바 써야 돼.
Sorry, this book.
아니 다 디과 미체와체 디과 산지에게 템바 써야 돼. 식디난 두고 디과 미체와체 디과
Yes.
디과 미체와 마세 아니 교 무슨 소와체로 다 디과 미체와다 교 무슨 소와데 아니 첸데르 데부도들 가려용 거라서나 심 튜버지 연구요랬어요. 어디랑 심 용수 튜베 탑당 심 용수 튜베 어디게들라 아니 어디 산지기 때문에 요래서 당도 뒤준 부다 달마스 산지기 때문에 써야 돼. 디직디다 디디나라다 세버 쉬지도 하더라.
Now, the first of these 4 subheadings that, through that Dharma you can realize that all the teachings are without contradiction. So here, the word teachings actually can also be doctrine, meaning the Buddha Dharma doctrine, what the Buddha taught. And this is very much conveyed in this verse at the bottom of page 7. So it sums up really what the Buddha taught when he instructed, do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So here, looking at the first level of refraining from non-virtue, isn't it? Negative actions and doing one's best to perform only virtuous deeds and thoroughly subduing the mind. So essentially there it says everything that the Buddha doctrine is about, the teachings of Buddha are about, and it's the method really that we're talking about for subduing the mind, for taming the mind, and that's the essence of it.
다들 마 여와 체윤도 산지 템버사들 여와 체윤도 다 산지 템버사들 세부 차송아.
Yeah, so is everyone clear about when we say Buddha's teaching, we also mean like Buddha doctrine, what was taught? Is that clear?
다들 여와 체윤도 네 똑베 템바다 롱게 템바 니치고라. 알바. 똑베 템바 랍스는 다들 봐. 롱게 템바다 똑베 템바 니치로와. 다 롱게 템바 사야데 아니 알아서 다다 롱 체니 체야데 슝 덤베 슝래 체니 체도 퇴섬 체도 그래 롱조 되는 숨지 체니 세와.
Yes.
되는 숨로 두가도 되는 두베되는 뭐베되는 네 되는 숨 체니에서 롭종 체야데 아니 지 진종 베숨 체야데라. 진종 베숨 체야데라. 대다 롱게 템바 진종 베숨 체와 롱게 템바데 아니 되는 숨 체. 대 아니 짐바다 배와당 아니 지체와데라 롱게 템바 진종 베숨 체로. 다 독베 템발라데 아니 라오송 냠네. 생기디게다 심주의 연대인데 제들 람데 제를 람 독베 템바사 템방오데다 롱게 템바데 템다 템바 톱에 탑조로 다 템방오네데 아니 당기 심유스 두사데 심유스 두어데 아니 람지를 받이게 다소소 심주의 연대인데 지 수림지 라와 띵이지 라와 단당한도 곰자는 셈바 템보 차야 아니 지 셰럽 지 동만이 공의 셰럽 거야 아니 지 수수 수림 미다 데 디고미체야 데 미션라 노미체야 들어와 지금 미래야 지금 밀런더방 것을 가지고 와서나 먼저 주 타마 지도 다주 시라시가 말해 타마야 시라시가 말 먼저 독슈디 미 잡라야 계자 주도 먹고 셰디 밀런누도 나라서 단다 나라서 단대지저로 이나 디 마게 주 타마 지도 마게서더라 다디 미 단다메와 미 잡라야 발라발라 망불라지도 디응네 셈바마지와 미 파르마지와 소고도 데 디버레 마지버사 디버레 세다 룽아게 나게 다 마게 마셰와디 돈바델라 추딤사 데르다 추딤
오케이
고나게 다 마게 지금에 나게 준시기메 나게 미 파르 참바데 마참바 소금에 세저로 디 담바데 디버미샤와 들어와 딜라데네 수수 삼바지와 여리 미신다 삼바 시와 용거라 어디 추림기 남샤디 어디 쾌케즈모 차다 딘데 레스로.
Now we talk about the teaching of the Buddha or the Buddha's doctrine, and that has two divisions, those of realization and those of scripture. So in terms of that set of scripture, what we're doing here very much is hearing and reflecting on the Tripitaka and these three baskets or three collections, if you will, of those scriptures, within which we have Duwe-denu, which is the basket of ethical constraint, and then these other ones of concentration and higher knowledge. So those three. So that's very much the method that we use to get the insights, the second set of the doctrine. We're coming back to this first set, the scriptures. What we first have to do is hear and reflect on that Tripitaka, and then become a holder of it, in the sense that we are hearing and reflecting on it, and we're going to increase our understanding of it. And when we've increased it, we get to that second set of the realized, part of the Buddha doctrine. So how does that occur? Here, the method that you used formally in the scriptures becomes a result. It becomes a path. it becomes a valid path in your mind. So here you're getting insights. What are you getting insights on? Ethics, concentration, wisdom. In that sense, your mind is becoming stable. You know, your mind is actualizing what you've studied in the scriptures. So then when we get to that stage of insights or realizations, that second set, you're cultivating a path. But also on the level of, we talked about the second set of realization and being a holder of those realizations of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Even on the ethical level, okay, so what you're doing is guarding against non-virtue so that you don't harm self and other on an ethical level. Yeah, so mainly this is the first two gross levels of body and speech, isn't it? So you're refraining from harmful physical activity, and you're also refraining from harmful verbal activity. And these verbal activities can be very negative. Of course, we don't tend to tell mistruths so much, or harsh speech, or divisive speech. But this fourth one, gossiping, lots of blah, blah, blah behind people's back, that can be very negative, and it can cause difficult things, even within the constraints of where we are at the Dharma Center. So that's something we have to guard against. Why? Because if you refrain from these non-virtues, you're happy, others are happy. It's kind of that protection there.
어디로 단다 디 로베이니기 네 저자나라 템베 탐주 남니디스로 템베 탐주 남니디 롱단 똑베 다니도스로 템베 탐주 남니디 템베 템바 똑베 템바텔라 니요레스 롱단 롱게 템바다 아니 똑베 템바 롱단 똑베 다니도스 틴진치와 마체와서도 다데 짐바다 아니 마체와 짐바다 틴진치와 마체와 도와치와 코나인시데 다 롱게 템바 짐바당 아니 마와당 아니 소소 요 벤숨 체와데 롱게 템바 짐바데체 다 아니 두바체와스데 네 라오송 냠네스나 다남 냠네 체제 수수 심줄래야지 삼바상보다 드리네시 삼바상보치야 드리네시 nga 시기면서로 베나 nga게데 담tum나 야부쇼도 안더라 nga게데 ngara bezun chigiro ngara di nga게데 투즈톨라 쇼부탄 거도라 네 미마지고 먹고서도
Yes.
제가 다 드리네가 nga게 지기면서 캘렌 체비나 아니 nga게 바체와 될 때에 수수심라 시워지 톱고요와
Yes.
수수심라 시워지 톱고래 미페졸라에 뇌베란 심메베 인자 다디 아니 시워 다 꼭대 대화 연대 심 연대지 중상 스스로 어디 다 템바 누가죠 봐
Okay.
딘데스 당아서 네지 네그레레레레 거네 네파 this 제토웨이나 아니 누가죠 코나이 서와되게 제가 산지에 템바서야 돼 롱게 템바진 좀 배우면 제가 당 아니 또왜 라버송 냠네 쪼주베다 람 냠네 치야 돼 산지 템바를 마시 텔레 심베 아니지 망보지게디 산지지 군다 샹야당 최된 샹야당 공바 샹야도서 산지게 템바를 좀 디마레 디 산지게 템바게 차진이라 차진 산지게 템바 진좀 배우면 치니 대사도서 기내당 튼견자를 마시 산지 템바고네디 네 수수 심주기 연대들 샤고 요러 다 개정보를 내 마신배 있는 양 상상랑서 넣어주고도 알아.
As Vasabandhu says in the Abhidharma Treasury, know that the conqueror's doctrine is twofold, that of the holders of scripture and the holders of realization. And when you become a holder of scripture, you hear, reflect on it, and you hold that and you increase it. And then, you're a holder or a teacher of it. But also, this second level of realizations, you become an accomplisher of the doctrine. You actually have the result. So in that sense, you become like a retainer or a holder in the realized sense as well as the scriptural sense. So how does it work on that second level of being really like a holder of the Buddha doctrine? Well, when one has a kind-hearted approach, that is it. You are trying to put into practice that doctrine. And that kind-hearted approach includes making the vows, such as we just mentioned, to refrain from doing lots of idle gossips. And I think it's important. I myself try to make a vow to make effort in this. Why? Because if we tend to gossip a lot, it can waste a lot of time. And it can also, as a result of talking a lot of meaningless things, make other people unhappy. Conversely, if you are refraining from speaking senseless things out of taking a personal pledge to do so, what you start to get is peace of mind. And not only do you get a kind of peace in your own mind, but there is that protection and that you're not harming others as well. So straight away there, you have what's called like a beginning of a cessation, a facsimile right there of what we're going for, which is the cessation. And when you have a kind of a part of a cessation, then you're already like a doctrine holder. You become like a doctrine holder. And that really is the essence of the Buddha Dharma right there. Because as we mentioned, a practitioner or a holder of Buddha Dharma, there are only two things. You either, like you're reflecting on the scriptures or you're trying to realize them, accomplish them. And those two sets, right? All these other things, like we have statues, we have stupas, we have gompas, they're there, but they're really like ornaments and places where we practice. That's not the main point. The main point is we ourselves have to actualize the Dharma by being holders of it.
저는 데 템버 탐지 게메 또 보세요도.
Yeah.
다 템버 가시에게 주림 송고 말해서 봐. 동리 공제. 샘바 템버 시에 람 또고 통보는 주림 송고 말해. 아니 가시에 주림 야고 송고나 되네 거 말해. 가시야 나도 템버라데 도 유태고 유태고 데비태고 시행 거라. 나게 템버. 또 지도 도당 나게 냠내려야 된데 멍보 또고 통보기 냠내는데 멍보 치야유자 아니 딜라 수준 송고 말해서로 다 근데 겨와 팀메기 저절 티쟁 템버로 티쟁 되면 팀메 된다 이제 가는 팀메 가지가지 해서는 티쟁데 산제 까 말해서인데 송고다 다 된데 템버 탐지 게메도 또 와서 저도 삼은 겨와요 말해서 봐 겨와면 가르서는 산제게 템바 룽게 템바 단다 또베 템바다 셰모시 룽게 템바들라다 겨와시기요라 다 저저 상만이 심뒤베 탑람 janjan 송바 인상 겨와요 말다 간다 되는 산제 템바 인스성어데 심뒤바데 탑람라야 여기 생기마 셰임바 팀미게 직 템바 파진 택베게 슝디게도 뭐 심락바 뒤베 탑람레스로 나게 템바디 또 템바디 심 참무 뒤베 탑람레셔다 니가 심 뒤베 탑람 송바 인상 겨와요 말했어. 빼나 먼저 팀메게 되네다. 저는 덴바시당 아니 추림이죠. 봐. 도베 제와도 참으시비셔가나 당봉 가서 룽아게 저와락바도 동고다. 간단다 셰버는 제가란서 지 수슬레나 미지가 수수 직 잡라다만라나 스큐민도 알아람사 고다데.
Yes.
네 피저 심로 가르테마데 단달람산 리그민도 알아. 피저 심게 담마데 테마데 하고 오면다. 비저 칙 담을 람나 딜람사 수수마지와 람사 소다디 제가 디 dom고요 락바디 dom고요 당보팅 팅메기 되네다 두베 되네도 그 락바 심 락바디 락바 뇨모 락바시다 동에 락바시다 심 락바 뒤단디 예수 당가 되면은 아니 마심 참으시다 그런 바송 인자 탐제 심 뒤에 탑랑송 인자 아니 템바 탐제 게메 어다 좀 된데 송제로 심 뒤에 탑랑송샤 겨민도 상당지 수술 심려야 다나로 버지 자야 중보이는 템바탐지 게면 또 와서야 돼 수술을 중얼다디 디셰지고 마음 버시쟁 알아서 상로 당고래서 아니 반응 알아서 펠라이나 양 닝마가주 사자사데 여러 가시 메신고 쉬우시기도 상로 야고다나 닝마가주 사자라 텐델 겨와요 말해 다저도 마셔져 되게 숭배 최인바 간실라 태과춤에 최견자로 나단 되어니 장장리 겨와 찍어요 말아 다대지 지 Deshe Jabdaro, Peshe, Dedes, Medaro Yoramashi. One a good Sunigina, Tijela Goje Mara. The Goma Zuni again, Shingo, Gazer of Mongoshe Degdo, ordinary, Chesa, Tembatum Kimeto was said in Allah. Duzurik to that. This summer down to Vina, to young around the Yawari, the Dujari, Mongbochi Mevchat, taking on the Sambamaji among was saying with a
So, in terms of this first line, or the first subheading of the greatness of Dharma, through it you can realize that all of the teachings are without contradiction. We have to understand that what it's saying is that everything that is within the Buddha's doctrine is not contradictory. So some people might think that, oh, I can meditate on emptiness, but ethics are not important. These other things. So dispensing the ethics and just meditating on emptiness. Or then in terms of the causal and resultant vehicles, I'll just go for the resultant vehicle of Tantra, but I won't worry about the causal vehicle, the Paramitayana vehicles. I'll leave those aside, not seeing the interdependence or cause and effect there. Or yet again, we might think that we are practitioners of the great vehicle of the Mahayana, but that the root yana vehicles that are concerned with the ethics and the Four Truths are not important. So these different levels of the Buddha doctrine are not in fact contradictory. And leave aside the second set of the Buddha Dharma, the realized set, for a moment. Let's just look at the scriptures. In that sense, all of the scriptures alone are, all of those scriptures that were set forth by Buddha were for the sole reason of subduing our minds, to subdue our mental continuums. Just the method for that, nothing else. So therefore, if we, as I mentioned quite recently, if we look at the perfection vehicle, the training in these perfections, that's dealing with subduing the gross levels of the mind. And when you get to the tantric, the maturational resultant vehicles, these are dealing with the more subtle levels of subduing the mind, the stains and so forth. So that was very important to remember the context. So now back to these root yanas and how they're not contradictory with the great vehicle. So under what we are sometimes called lower vehicle or root yanas, what are they dealing with? They're dealing with the Four Truths and ethics. And very much these things are to do with subduing the grosser levels of our behavior, vis-a-vis physical and verbal. So first we have to subdue the gross things before we can subdue the subtle things. So in terms of the speech we just talked about, we really have to guard against negative speech, because you could be thinking all sorts of things, but if you say something bad, it comes out immediately. Yeah, and that's where the damage can be done with others, let alone the mind. So once more, there's no contradiction between these lower vehicle ethical things and these later maturational mental things. As we mentioned, the perfection vehicle dealing very much with the gross, and the tantric vehicle, the subtle. And this is something that we can start to see in our own experience. Just think on it personally. How if you are able to subdue your mind or speech, then you have like a facsimile of beginning to subdue these grosser levels, isn't it? And then we can look at this non-contradictory nature of Buddha Dharma from the perspective of Tibet and the Buddha Dharma in Tibet. There used to be periods where people would say, oh, that's Nyingma, that's a just Nyingma approach, that's Kagyu approach, that's Sakya, that's Geluk, and they'd fixate on one particular of the schools, thinking that they were different. But in actual fact, all of these different streams of the Tibetan lineage are all expressing Buddhist doctrine. They are not in fact contradictory at all. Little differences are there within those four schools for the benefits of beings, but ultimately they will end up in being the result of the tantric maturational vehicle. So it's not good to have this attitude, oh, that's good within the Buddha Dharma, oh, that's a good teaching, I like that, or that's not a good teaching, I don't accept that. That would be the contradiction we want to avoid. Then what happens is that becomes the grave infraction of disparaging the conqueror's teaching, which is heavy karma.
Sungra malu tangla da chawa, sungra malu wasili, jawe sungra ka nachigi na, chidang kadang basigidwa. Igi ka nachigi na, simju diwe tanglamdi kirtumna, sungra malu tangla da chawa chungbore. Te chungbayi na, jawe gongba dela di nye waris. Jawa, ta chigi tanda domba shaje diwe zor juwe, jawe shinye di jegi gongba zor di kharesi na, simju diwe tanglamdi res. Chidang sungra malu, simju diwe tanglamdi kiesheba di chungbayi na, nyeje chumbo, yangsang lai jang sungsi diwe, nganzo, 지 룽아게 예주 춤보들라 간저 단다 간저 룽아게 조방에 바디 간저 동에 실속도 아니 심다 인다니다 심 스미지 남도지 아니 룽아게 조바치 다디 아니 지 템바탐제 거면도 와서라말로 당아차와 충분히나 아니 예외 공부들라디 니와 마세 수수 주기 아니 쩐티게디 다지 미지 양산에 마 사두고 유나 대추 잡도 그랬어. 이제 전부 양산 내장 송스데. 당서 지 릉하게 조방 엠바디 온게 내가 가두이나 마 양산을 처음도 요인자 따단다 딘데지다 다 좀된데 송과디 단달람린 송과디 심주디베 탈람레 당행을 조락바도서 칼레칼레 당구도 상당한데네 소소 양산을 송두고 요래서 이제 전부 양산 내장 송세다디 제주 시디 디나를 참용고도.
So that second one, if you can understand then also that all of the scriptures dawn as an instruction in your mind here, kadampa, really the meaning of that is literally the instruction of the Buddha and, protecting that instruction and understanding that all of the kadampa, all of the instructions of Buddha are to subdue one's mind. Now, if you can actually see that and hoist that in, then you can easily see what the intention of Buddha was. Yeah. So what was Buddha's intention? It was so that we could subdue our minds. And then within that, on the grosser level, be protected from this fourth kind of fault, if you will, of perhaps going to a lower realm. So how does that work? Well, if you understand what Buddha intended us not to suffer. And in order to protect us from our, we think a lot. So in order to protect us from our random thoughts and acting out our thoughts, because when we act out our thoughts, unsubdued thoughts, we act in a physical and verbal ways. Now it's the physical and verbal ways that cause us to suffer extremely. If our physical and verbal behavior is extremely gross and negative, we could go to the abyss of the lower realm. So that brings that fourth line in, to be protected from the abyss of faulty conduct. So what are we doing? We're protecting our body and speech from acting negatively and falling to the lower realm. So then if you understand that in the context of those, seeing all of the scriptures as instruction, and that Buddha intended us not to suffer within that, and the third element of protection, you can see how all of the Buddha's teachings are to subdue your minds.
아니 기부 탐바다지 다 엄마다 람링기 다 기부 람린 템베 따고기 아니 기부 다게 담배 초디 소디다 기부 섬지 람지를 맨날 리샤요 레스타 심규도 람게 탑람레 예디예디 아니 소디 아니 기부 섬지 람지를 맨날 수 리샤요 인자 아니 딜라야다 이러면도 전대 수식 유스다 다 딜라야 이 가우 마치니기 미수식이 어레스 존데스 남주단 덴바 남주단 덴바지 이나 아니 람링가 슝딜야다 가와지 그레스 다 되는 가르스는 남주단 미딘베 미지기 디냠네라 슈투고 마레스 거요다
Okay, okay. So now following on to the next verse on page 4. Therefore, this supreme instruction is relied on by many fortunate ones, the wise beings of India and Tibet. What analytical person would not be captivated by the stages of the path of the three types of beings? Really, what the Lam Rim, these sequential steps on the path to enlightenment, are expressing is, and those wise ones who have relied on it were within India and Tibet, fortunate to rely on it, and that everything in the Lam Rim is instructing these three capacity practitioners. Everything is condensed to those three levels. And if you have some discriminating intelligence, you would see that. You would not see it, as it were. And so therefore the ones who would not be fortunate wouldn't be able to see that. But yeah, that's it.
어디지? 다 기우숨 써야 돼. 다 람림기 저저 삼제 기우숨나 두고 요wen자. 기우숨데. 가래라wen데 단다 전주 람르나라야. 간식 탐니 간다 그 코베 대화잔데 랑기 튼데 니죠. 데니 기우 타마신스다. 송어다 베낭 안조 왕의 송게 다수수 상로로지 따용데 다수수 룡하게 줘발라 삼로 따용데 딕바 망고 체샤 와 알하와르도 다 겨와니 렌로도 다디 삼로당고 요라 망보지 그러와 당 마란도 시당가 맞춘주 간에 단다사고 로디게 차서 다 제메 가와르시 두고이나 간데르 차게 나좀
Yeah.
미 망보지 데 삼로데 당겨라 데 삼로 당야데 계지 뭐라 다 디네니 디 잡라다 마지 따라서 시기 매버시 되게 연다 야셔라다 팀민도 왔다 정말 따라서 엘레데 신다샤 말을 스스 나한게다 베나이낭 얘기 바와다 아마요 볼라몰라도 정말 돈사도로 그런저 볼라몰라다 가셔야 되지래니 가셔 돈사를 주나 안다 먼저 돼 줘야래 다 디제라는 가두고 있는 서로 같네 와 디제네 컨트롤 차고 있는 데 지워로 와 디제라니 겨월에다 겨월들라니 와단다 엘레다 징여다 이다다서 파샤제 단당서 튼도 기단 심미단 지우단 저건단다 딘데 랑단 있니 딘데 망보지 통해도 와 네 드저고 제용도 아메 고변네 파죽도서 제용도 기도서 제용도 그 겨워질래용도 미 겨워질래용도 그 더버지도 하더라 미드저 아니 마 제용단다 집죽도서 제용다 제다라도 고변날데 네 디네 마지 아니 아메 오마테 시단서 더버지도 알아
Yeah.
제단 다 디네 렛슨 자주 보시고 담아도는 다 치료워질 겨울내면은 가져오라 갈라서 다 진다 어드르지는 갈라야부터로 저는 늦절에는 아주 칠 갈라야부터도 아니 칠라지 럽정야부터 치라만 망고 포고도로 칠라만 시다되무다 칠 아니 갈라서 아니 잠잠러지도 아니 니지고 개면도 알아 칠 열래나 밀레 겨울내면은 거 직대 지에도다 거 직신다로 직파 밀라이 펜더로버체 지 고육래 순교로버체 대식 대한직 도삼자로지로 미다 신이 바로 겨와디 신고다라 제산때 겨와지 미실레나의 약사를 해서 겨와디 칠레나다 배사사를 해서 딘데 삼로 당구고요라 다간다로 왔음로 삼로지 ngoyene주기 여기 삼로디야 당구고요 다간다로 와 딩언저 직 낭배 냠는 두스 상와직 싱베 쇠샤 지단다 싱베 쇠다 타도나다 싱베 쇠 잔잔다 레델레 낭배 쇠샤 많이 봐 코란 유대 바로 가셔야지 겨왕어지다지 이 겨울에서 낭배 최신이라 여와서 최신 마진이라 매우 대 말에 최 마진이데 제데 시고다로 겨울에 그거 요래 최 캘레니데 겨울에 그거 시고 그거 먼저 제가 디고 ngoyne 지선한테 신고 요래 어디 걸어가서 삼모데 땅 둠나 야고 요래 왔다
Krishna Lamdrungi Yangyurshtisumda di Kibuchungi Senidi.
간식 탐니 간다게 서와 코에 대화 잠달래 랑기 튼데 녀자 되니 기부 타마시 Angela Tanda Chiran Tanda Ngelam Justa, the Julda, and the Jutame Tinido, Tanda the Jilla Lao. The Tandang lad Lavina, and Conducimna la Cora Chagro, and the Ne Tini the Chevy in our Shemish Tini Chevy in Condu Tomdur.
Okay.
I would take the Jurumar Tanda the Jushra.
Yeah. So now thinking on the, we have to ask, what are these three capacities of practitioner? That's stated clearly in Atisha's Lamp for the Path, when it says that whomever seeing the nature of cyclic existence for his or her own protection seeks freedom from the miserable states and goes for the human rebirth, that is the initial capacity practitioner. So here, what we're thinking on is the possibility of the lower realm, or the non-virtuous actions and the results of them, that they can lead to an unfortunate rebirth. Basically, what this is saying is that one needs a protection from the possibility of birth in an unfortunate realm, and then one should think on it. One should think on one's future birth. So, like this. At one time we were young, but then slowly we are getting old. And as we start to get older, we should start to think, oh, I'm going to go somewhere. Where am I going to go? It's a reality. Of course, it's good to think on it. It's a reality that we're going to die. Some people might think they're not. It would be best if we don't have to die. But that's not reality. The reality is that we do have to die. So in my case, even looking at my grandparents, well, they're all gone. Some of you still have your grandparents or parents, but some of them have already died, isn't it? This is a reality. So another point is to think, where do you go? I mean, where do you go when you die, isn't it? So that's a very good point. You have to go there alone. And somehow there are beings that migrate. We're called transmigrators. So where do those migrators go? Well, it is said that there are various realms that they can go to. These are sometimes called the lower realms, where are these hell existences and pretas there. Leave those aside for the minute. Let's just look at the animals, shall we? Because the animals are closer to us and we can see them around us. For example, dogs, cats, cows, how they have to take birth, and they will take birth like us humans within the constraint of a womb. Okay, so looking at puppies have to be born in the womb of the mother, and they come out of the mother, and then they have to take milk. Very similar to us, isn't it? But in other ways, dogs not so similar. Because what is the dog's life like? Well, a dog has to be fed. A dog can't study like we can. A dog can just eat food, go for walks, and sleep. That's pretty much it for a dog. Right? And if you really understand the borderline between being a dog and being a human, well, the humans are a little bit better placed. Because we can generate much more of what's called altruism, a thought to benefit others. And somehow we can have an effect within society and we should know that. We should know clearly the demarcation between animal and human. So best case, if we're starting to think of future lives, is that we're human. Not so good to be born as a dog. And one should think on this because this is a reality. This is a reality. And in terms of Buddha Dharma, when we look at these things, it's not something made up by the Buddha doctrine, not at all. This is actually the reality. Some say, that those future existences, where you might go, that's just made up in some religion or in Buddha Dharma. That's not the reality. But actually, if you look at reality, there are people that have actually died and are dying and will have to go somewhere. And if we really look at the reality, this is what's taking place. So now it's up to us to think on this first level.
어디 제단다 데레데 간식 탐니 간다기 코웨 대화 짬다 제단 미다 코웨 날라 미 대화디 때지 야가도 와 제단 코웨
Yes.
대화 제단 랑게 텐데 nye 제와다 라니 그 녜송게 동일라 직신다네 녜송라 겨월레야들 직니에 아니
Okay.
겨워치면 밀류든지 토고도 스라 대체의 간식 탐니 간다게 스다 탑 간데 쳐버려서나 다 수술라 딩즈면도 아니 다 군조를 잡스도야 도스레다
Okay.
겨워치마디 나랑 녜송라 메집에 딩알 민도 와스다 다 디껴베 누버슬레 열었으나 아니 군조선라 열에다 도 제자 딜라 대체의 군조선라 잡스도야다 또 탑람디다 미 류덴 토베라 아니 딜라우라 가서 면람 팀함에 참자스러워 제주숨 상고래 면람다 겨워치마 아니 원대 밀루 토바지 용어쇼스지 면람이야 보시켜 아니 디 탑라야 아니 진소 파진 쪽에 수리 넘버 탑에 시송 수림송 고거다 와 수림송 선단당저 나 밀루 준시기미 나 예시기미세 근데 두조다 수림 로고야래 소제기미 미세기미 로임치기미세 다두저 수송원에 근데 잼데비나 나 수림 켈레나 말레나 수림 송고여래라
Yes, yes.
근데 되네 짐바다야 나 수림 짐바다야 소고금이야 근데 저거 탑도 저래다 나 제주 숨상 면람 때야 지 수림 소야 지 짐바당 소고금이야라서 대다 제주 숨디 사나 아니 수송원에 직패 밀리터도야게 샤워 직체 다 수송원에 토마도나나 아니 고조선라 잠로 제비이나 잠로 대 개월업 전부 유선자 대도게 아니 오늘 함이 고만 토고요 인자 탑람 얘기 더 내가서 아니 냠내인데 지고요 레스타 디기우 충 디니 기우 타마시에서 기우 타마스디 다 기우 수문안에 기우 충을 남기는 바데 디레스 왔다
Right, so coming back to Lamp for the Path, how it talks about the initial capacity practitioner's scope and what it entails, goes like this. Whomever seeing the demerits of psychic existence and has like a sense of, trepidation? You know, if you have like a concern that you could take an unfortunate rebirth, and just wishing for your own protection from that difficult rebirth within samsara, seeks refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha for themselves alone. That is the initial capacity scope practitioner. So what's being said here is that whomever seeks by whatever means, the definition says. So what we're talking about is whomever decides to seek a means to be free from the potential difficult rebirth, because we're not free, isn't it? So in order to be free, we need to rely on something. So what are we going to rely on that affords that method or protection? We're going to rely on the three sublime ones, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So here, the method, or tablam in Tibetan, the method or valid path is that you again want to be human. Bottom line, you again want to be human. So now, how does one go about that? There are three things that bring that about. You have to have stainless prayer. You have to make the strong aspiration to again be human in this life. And then over and above that, you have to practice these six paramita yanas, the six perfections. And within those, mainly keeping ethical constraint, because that's the bottom line that creates the cause again to be human. And we said that keeping ethics means that we're practicing that right now. We're trying our best not to lie, not to do these physical things, not to kill, not to steal. And we're trying to do that with good conduct to subdue our minds and hold our ethics. And that's one cause of, again, the perfect human rebirth. And then these other things are also within that method of securing a perfect human rebirth. These other perfections, when we practice generosity, the wish to give, the heart or the mind that wishes to give to others, the patience, the forbearance, all of these things constitute the method to again be human, which is the initial scope. So once those three things are together, stainless prayer, ethics, and the six perfections, then you're going for those goals of perfect human rebirth, and then which is called a birth of high status, let's say.
이 로드 바나 분이 통고 있으면.
Can you not see, you guys? Do you want some light over there? Over here on that side. Yeah.
Question in the dear.
Yeah, question is okay.
You saw mentioned that humans are not animals.
Yes, yes.
Humans aren't animals.
Yes.
But it seems to be a very common thing that we say, oh, humans are social animals, like we're social.
Right.
We're called animals many times in different contexts. We're called animals.
Yes, I'm wondering, Philippa, if that's a coin of phrase. I know His Holiness says social mammals. Shall I ask Ishla?
I've heard of all say social animals.
Okay. He does. But kapriwa ngonzo dilab gara, ngonzo human, ngonzo social animal ra. Kyarimshe kapkap di
말에
sungi.
된데 디 애니멀에 디 인지측네 부결 수준을 가르라고 그래.
Dundro.
쟤네들 이거 말아.
Yeah, it doesn't.
심진 라나도 좋아. 심진 람나다 디겨데. 먼저 미드 튼도 말아. 다 디다 인지측이 다다 대요 말아다.
Yeah, here we have a breakdown in language, because if we translate that animal word back to Tibetan,
튼도.
it means dundro, which is totally different from being human, so it doesn't quite translate back the other way.
다 심진 람나.
But if
심진 애니멀 그거 있는 디거다.
if we say that the animal is a sentient being, that's fine, But to say that
social 심진 being 람나 디거.
a social sentient being,
social animal 디다.
social animal, then in the Tibetan context of animal, that has to have 4 legs that goes on the ground.
튼도 써야 돼. 미 튼도 지나요 그래요 말.
Yeah, a human, by very definition within the Tibetan, the humans and animals are completely different.
어디로? 난다디 면람게 될라. 아니 저치면 밀리토 맛에 파마야 고질게야. 아니 담배 쳐유슬게야. 와 룽버 그런 시디유스질게야. 어딘데 면람게 오르다. 되게 빼쳐버려. 파마야 고질 맞이는 깔래도. 밀리토베이나 파마야 고질 겨말에는 깔래 빼드려도 앞에 고조서거는 툭 사러. 깔래 쉬우래도 하시는 거.
둘라?
면람도 자오래서 항상. 여치마데 면람 파마야 고지 파마 찬심지 파마 최유니 파마 쇠와 파마 람산 파르만더니 콘도마사니 다 파마 축부고 말해 파마 셈바 상고지 연나데 그래 축부 룽게르든데 너 처음엔도 알아.
So then, coming back to the making stainless prayers vis-a-vis thinking of again being human, to that end, it's very important we make these aspirations, not only that our prayers are stainless and that we're going for a human birth again, but that we have good parents. We aspire to have parents that are kind of in line with Buddha Dharma. What's that word in English? Anyway, the parents have they'll support us if we want to practice Dharma, and also we're born in a peaceful country. In terms of it's good to be born in a country where Buddha Dharma is there. That's very important.
Bhutan, Thailand, Bhutan yagodo, Thailand yagodo. 신다 롱바도 나시다 유메다. 나게 주의에나라 낭베기 제가 약시 속보디 최야고라 최디 때 야고라 민두선에 속보 다르요. 속보디 빼데 진데 레도. 지난 속보 낭주에다 낭바래. 다 별라 지난다 낭주에다 미도 야고데 겸이디 빼 강에도 겸이디 빼 메시지 정보도.
And coming back to the aspirations for future life in terms of the parents, it would be nice if you can aspire that the future parents be a little bit soft and kind-hearted to your disposition. If your disposition is in line with Dharma, that the parents aren't really quick to anger, even if they're rich. It doesn't benefit if they're rich and irritable. it would be much better if the parents were soft and kind-hearted and supported your Dharma path. That would be much, much better to aspire for that sort of family and be born with parents that are, sensitive to your persuasion on the path. Now, coming back to these countries, it seems to be that Bhutan is a good place to be born in terms of a place where the Buddha Dharma is flourishing. Also, Thailand seems to be quite good. I'm not so sure about Tibet anymore. It seems to be so dominated by the pressure of the Chinese. If we look at Mongolia, well, in some sense it's okay, but how thorough or clean is the Dharma there? I'm not sure.
Mongolia, Russia,
Yeah, Russia.
the
Yeah, the Mongolians suffered a lot at the hands of the Russians. So.
The Trolla show down the Zumbling dinner, Trolla Mongo show, the Tango, Rindanjing, Rikshung, the Trolla, Mevasoda.
Yeah.
Chedan the Melam Jawdang, the Shini, Jawachi Langura, right, Sansan Kaduina, the Tiringi, Ziglagangam Raja, the Jams, and the Jawachime, the Melam Dix is Jamaya, Melam Sini, the Kepe Chamber.
It's a waste that so many cultures were destroyed by these regimes. So much cultural kind of destruction has taken place in these countries. That's quite sad. But anyway, coming back to making the aspirations, we're going to die, and we're going to take birth. So therefore, from time to time, when you motivate to have a good day and practice well, also do some aspirations that you have a good future birth when you
next level visa is preparation application.
Yeah, make the application for your visas now.
Bhutan or Thailand?
For the future birth, Bhutan or Thailand.
Yeah, question.
What's this about that? It seems like Buddhism, for example, in New Zealand, also flourishing.
I'm not sure. New Zealand.
Are you asking if New Zealand's a good place?
This is peaceful, and I feel like I have so much freedom studying.
They were the Janada Aridan to Achivalada, New Zealand in Kipsara. Nani Bhutan to Achirochi like New Zealand is like Jigmeda.
The question was, do you think that New Zealand is a good place because it's quite peaceful here and the Dharma seems to be doing okay? Is that your question? Tigishla Tiwakoira Morangla New Zealand.
Yaura, the Canada, Russia, that Zule Jolembalada, New Zealand Jolen Yasara. Yine the Tunjian language, Putawajik, Kuyu Tangbushana, Bhutan, Zule Chenada. Could be dinner stress, the anxiety, down in the Shuxambo depression, down Ranji in the Shuxamboredo.
Medua con Bhutan.
Tangushera, that's Kuni Dursam those Raya.
Yeah, New Zealand would be better choice than at the current juncture, perhaps China or Russia. But having said that, again, Bhutan has harmony in the context of the Buddha Dharma flourishing there, and there's less stress there, there's less self-cherishing, and also the environment is harmonious for practice of Dharma.
Buddhism country,
yeah,
Thailand, the government are training government. Thailand, Jago Kurang, Nangju, Tola, Jabjo, bed, relax, bed to Belogarida. The New Zealand government, the Buddhism government has none, and
it seems to be when the country itself is like a government, or like accepts Buddhism, like Bhutan and Thailand, then straight away the society and the people in it are much more relaxed. So if New Zealand becomes Buddhist, I'm going to pray to be born here. If we become a Buddhist country, then. Thailand nangla
Pejin Mahayana Duedua, Yine Yongda Gamindua.
The question, do they have the Vajrayana and the Mahayana in Thailand? Kishla was asked that question.
Duedu, Tangu Thailand, Tangu, the King Ashoka, the teaching Dembaredo. 전에 야나네 다야들레 티진 데스도와 다 단다 다야디 탤런트 지고로 다 팀미 바지그래도 스리랑카네 렌조드래도 이제 택바 tik진 다는 안아서 별 답은 안 시던데다 요 말다 가고르도 비 가고르.
It seems that originally in Thailand they did have the transmission of the great vehicle from King Ashoka, but at the moment Thailand seems, like as did Sri Lanka, but at the moment Thailand seems to be more on the, what do you say, Rutjana vehicle practice, Theravada.
네. 예, 건조배 디 장마장 야래도 가셔야 돼요. 권용 오람 택바 전부 쳐야돼서 권용 이제 지금도 가셔야 돼. 낭배 쳐 말했어. 배송 말했어. 근데 이제 지금도 공속하셔.
Yeah.
어떤 일이?
Yeah, their practice of those Rutjana teachings of Buddha is so clean, keeping the Vinayas is very good. But then again, some of them don't even accept that the Mahayana is Buddha's teaching.
그 단위 흉마 탤런트라.
Yeah.
배 삼바배 끼우동네. 배 미창마 털르 미창마 개무게라. 아니 직도 미세면 다시도 내도.
Yeah.
탤런트 믹스해직도 누가시도 농목호란라도 저금도.
I visited Thailand some years back, and everyone there, to my appearance, seemed happy and relaxed. They seemed to have something special feeling there, I felt.
다단다 깜루체네 네 밀리토그로 해서 돼 로주 여러와데 단다디 좀 된데 숨주자숨을 해내라 좀 된데 윰라 틀린서 피디에네 하이를 내려와 하네 아니 하이 부지글야다 치다 중에 하드즈 저 거랭의 싱글에 지금 저 지금 파과라 저란다 파과 쪽바라 하드 장마 쇼라 그거들라다 돈이마도 동에 가져야 한 징네드네 땅아 배데 딱 저지마 파과 저란야라자다 전에 좀 된데 대슈되면서는 좀 된데를 점로 채도 땅아 잡로치스 그런 심팅네 좀 된데를 점로 채도 점로 채버되는 체 근데 체표네 저지마 데 밀리톰네 존데 총받지 좋고 지금 불을 아니 랍드 중 저데 다좀 고마 더보다 제가 좀 내대 디스트릭제 땅에 진주도 점르체 오레스 점르체는 마타이능에서래 겹터지 용그레스 데다 좀 내대 중에 루주 코라나라도 chen 중된 거지요 내가 당기 점르체나 밀리토베라와열라 좀젠데다로
Okay. Now, there's a story of how taking refuge in the valid objects of the three sublime ones, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, can actually afford or result in a perfect human rebirth. The story of Lord Buddha's mother, born in the gods of the 33. Lord Buddha went there to teach his mother there, and that abode is full of deities, full of gods, one of whom was about to die, and due to their clairvoyance, that particular deity saw the future rebirth and saw that they would be born as a pig. Pigs live in quite a dirty environment. Deities live in very clean environments. In dependence on seeing that deity that was going to be born as a pig got quite scared, fear, and approached Buddha and said, Buddha, can I take refuge in you? I've seen where I will be born. So then Lord Buddha instructed that deity, that God, to take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha from the depths of the heart. So what happened there was a change of direction of the future. What happened was fresh karma was accumulated to be born not as a pig, but in a rich family, in the household of a rich family, the conditions of which were that that person became ordained later on and then actually got the fruit of an arhat. So now, what all this comes to show is that Lord Buddha himself said, showing that bottom line, if you take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, you won't go to the lower realms and you'll be born, human. So we'll stop there for today.
다들은 랑종의 기승 텐저텐지라라 양자 텐저텐지디 텐저텐지디 때로나 야고 양자로 아니 디제라 로 디제나 아니 치오미다고 되는 마 때스로 되는 야고요.
We're out of time to recite the whole of the Lamrim together. We can do that in our time. We like to recite it sometimes, but for homework, you might have studied the Perfect Human Rebirth, you know, these 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. That's good. Read it again. And then, and also, but move on to the next topic of the initial capacity, which is death and impermanence. It would be good to prepare that as well.
다들 네 랑종 곰데스 잡투나데 템바탐제 게메드 똑과 당 디카둘라니 다 산제게 템발라야데 심디오라니 당보 심라고드라니 당가 람링게 진다 승주스나데 람림 예네 드리네제가 에론고 섭시다 지금에 켈렌시도비나 오네 야고라.
Now, something to meditate on during the week. We've been looking at the fact that all of the doctrine of the Buddha is without contradiction in its various levels and stages, and that all of that Buddha doctrine is intended to subdue our mental continuums, to subdue our minds. And we talked about the fact that on a gross level, we're going to do that. But we're also going to make the kind of pledge, you know, that from now until the next class we attend, we're going to do our best to gossip less. That's good. We'll stop now.
On page 31 for the short mandala.
Sangye shinde mi de wa ye drogo nanda shin la chupa sho. Zera de she nanga de le joju je wa dang lo sang den be de me sa som je. Choe mun se ta tu ni chu chi. Ida guru rene mendela kam ni ya ta ya. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha, living beings without exception, into that enlightened state. Jewel Bodhicitta, let us not hold. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, I pay homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults. That the Buddhas stay and teach, and I dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue. The dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma, Sankhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. Wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. Comparably kind, Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech. Sleep fulfilled. Show around the teachings of transmigrated beings, who makes extremely clear the path to the unification of emptiness and compassion.
To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech. May all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.
You who uphold the seducer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining and preserving, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. By relying on the 2 accumulations of myself and others in 3 times, may the teachings of the